All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host for today's broadcast, Insanely Year 13. Real quickly, let's look at some of the drivers who will be partaking in today's event. P1R Habit is in one of the McLarens. Not seen him in a car for a while. Rex Style is back in the number 180 Dodge Viper. Indiel Cosmic is going to be taking over in the number 51 BMW M8. Lee Sherd is going back-to-back stints in the number 64 Dodge Viper. Indiel Ardno is back in the number 420 McLaren. Water T is in the 747 Merc. Chrysalid is going back-to-back stints in the Chevrolet. Barcode is going back-to-back stints. We know he's actually doing Ironmanning all three in his number 38 Viper, hopefully with a better strategy this time. Haya Cranky is going to be back in his Mercedes. Indiel Shadow will be back in the 160 Team Noodle Dodge. Indiel Togue will be back in the McLaren 720. And P1R Moonrise is back in his Chevy as well. Moonrise has opened up a significant overall distance advantage. However, now he will have to deal with some slightly different drivers, and this is the stint that we will likely see go from day to night. So the end of this stint will be under nighttime conditions. So things we're anticipating will be looking quite a bit different, at least when it comes to on-track. This will also lead to a bit of a change in handling on the cars, as the cars that may feel very, very good in the daytime will likely feel significantly less good at night here. As we prepare to get underway for stint 2 out of 3 for the final P1R SEC Enduro of the season. We had 12 drivers start last stint, only 10 of them made it to the end. P1R Habit's teammate did not show up for stint 1. Also, one of the drivers who did do stint 1 was trying to do stint 2, but they said that they were too tired and not able to do this at all. All right, and here we go. Again, field will be single file like last time. Single file until they get under the bridge that is shortly after the switchback turns 1 and 2, and then they'll be underway. So very little amount of time is actually spent getting your tires warmed up. You basically have to fire off right out the gate. Okay, so it is Moonrise trying to hold off Togue and Shadow. Same top 3 cars that we had in stint 1, and we are underway once again here at Nurburgring Nordschleife. This time, Moonrise has opened up a gap on Togue immediately. Togue is nowhere close to Moonrise right now. Oh, and Shadow goes a little wide, leaves the inside open for Haya Cranky, but Cranky does not have the stability in the rear of that Mercedes to put the power down. But you know who does have that kind of stability? ESV Barcode trying to wrap around the outside of the Mercedes, and he's got it. ESV Barcode has cleared the Mercedes, and now Haya Cranky is back under threat from Chrysalid. These two were going back and forth at for a good chunk of stint 1, and now they'll be back at it again in stint 2. But Barcode showing some punchiness very early on here, a complete inversion of what he was looking like in the prior stint. He's actually going to be utilizing some softer tires, not committing to a crazy hard tire strategy. But the Dodge Viper still has a very significant weakness. It does not have the ability to outrun drivers in a straight line. He's going for a big dive up on the inside on Indiel Shadow. Shadow tries to stay out of the outside wall, but back-to-back corners with Barcode on the inside means that he is able to muscle his way by. So ESV Barcode makes his way up into the 3rd position. The next 2 drivers on his list will be Indiel Togue and P1R Moonrise. Already, it looks like Haya Cranky is fighting with Shadow, and Shadow has lost ground to Haya Cranky. And now here comes Chrysalid as Shadow gets back by Haya Cranky. Chrysalid tries to move by, so Chrysalid's by the Mercedes, but could not get back by the Dodge Viper. The Viper very nearly goes off circuit there. Chrysalid's going to have a fantastic run. Do you try to make it side by side coming up to the jump? No moves there, not that time. As this trio, 4th, 5th, and 6th, all stay pretty much locked together. But the lack of top-end speed in Shadow's Dodge is really going to keep this pack bunched up behind him. High Cranky looks to try and get alongside Crislin. Crislin wants to try and make a move. He looks to the inside, has to back out. He's got to go off. He goes way off. Crislin is still off. He's not the only one. One of our top 3 drivers were off as well. I think that may have been Togue. Crislin falls all the way back to 9th, and Togue has fallen back to 7th position. So now, ESV Barcode moves up into 2nd position on track, and the driver he'll have to be fighting with will be P1R Moonrise. But the gap that Moonrise has over Shadow and overall distance is so wide that basically you would need to see Moonrise have accidents for him to have a serious shot of losing the overall event to ESV Barcode. Ooh, tire into the dirt there by Moonrise. Already our top 2 have absolutely pulled away from the rest of the field here. You can only see the rest of the grid in just very, very brief moments. NDL Shadow still holding on to 3rd position, but he is not closing on the top 2 at all. He's just barely keeping Haya Cranky, NDL Ardno, NDL Cosmic, and Togue behind him. Actually, Togue is way off, but yeah. Shadow, Cranky, Ardno, and Cosmic all stuck on top of each other in this massive glut of cars here. Bit of a slide. High Cranky obviously has a faster car. The Mercedes are still very good in straight line speed, but Dodge Viper is competent in corners and will have a significant tire life advantage. You see Cosmic and Togue really going at it farther back. Down into the twisties now. Well, the twistiest straight. You don't want to be side by side through these corners if you can help it. The track looks wide enough, but the line is not. It doesn't matter though. It looks like High Cranky is going to try and go for it. High Cranky has what will be the inside line on the first major braking point. Is he going to be able to commit? He's going to go deep. He goes very deep. He's got it. Cranky is by NDL Shadow. That's the highest we've seen High Cranky put himself on merit, although Shadow is not done with him yet. And right behind Shadow is still Ardno and Cosmic just a little bit farther back from him. As the foursome now rushes down to the carousel. Looks like for the moment, High Cranky is going to be able to use the sheer power of his car to gap away from High Cranky just a little bit here. But at the front, ESV Barcode and P1R Moonrise, nose to tail. We know the Dodge Viper has superior tire life. We know that Moonrise is in a car that already burns through its tires very quickly. If this is what it looks like early on, when Moonrise does not have to worry about tire life, what is it going to look like later when Moonrise is struggling? Because we've seen that Barcode has been very, very aggressive. Right off the bat, he put the bumper on Moonrise. Moonrise hangs the rear end out. He keeps the car together, but they are side by sides ahead. Down to the following corner, still side by side. The Dodge is most of the way around. He's by. He had to put the bumper on Moonrise, force Moonrise off circuit, but he is by. And now Moonrise puts the bumper back to Barcode. Under braking the following corner, the Dodge drops tires into the dirt. Remember, the gap between Barcode and Moonrise at the end of Stint 1 was absolutely massive in Moonrise's favor. If they just run like this, just about nose to tail to the end of the stint, it's not going to matter. Moonrise will maintain the vast majority of his advantage over Barcode. However, if these two end up separating apart from each other as the event goes on, maybe there is a possibility that Barcode has the speed to make something happen and try to climb his way back into fighting for a win. ESV has won, although it's not been the same ESV car, ESV has won the last 3 Enduros at Kyalami, Catalunya, and Bathurst off the back of the obscene strength of the Dodge Viper just because the Dodge Viper does not burn through tire life. Moonrise has fantastic straight line speed and the draft. He's going to use this to pull back alongside the Dodge. It's a drag race between the two, and it'll be an easy overtake. So Moonrise goes back to the top as they head down the long back straightaway. Barcode now falls back in line behind the Chevrolet, and will just use the draft to carry him on a little bit faster down the straight this time by. Bit of a twitch, bit of a slide there by Moonrise. A little bit farther down the grid, Higher Cranky is pulled away from Indiel Shadow and Ardno. And then you have Togue and Cosmic just behind. So Togue has gotten by Cosmic, but Togue, despite starting near the front, is losing ground. And already, side by side again, it's another drag race. Dodge versus Chevrolet down the start-finish straight. The Chevy has the inside line for the first half of the corner, but then the Dodge actually backs out. He will not go side by side on the exit of the chicane. So the Chevy goes back to the front. I thought it would be a while until we saw Barcode go and put the screws back to Moonrise again, but no, it was immediate this time by. Real quickly, looking at the tire life. 32% already for Moonrise. For Barcode, 31%. For Haya Cranky, who runs nice and comfortably in third, 30%, a little bit better than our leaders actually. Then you have Indiel Shadow, who runs fourth, 31%. Then you have Ardno just behind another McLaren. That's in the 31% range. Indiel Togue, who runs in sixth position, 32%. Indiel Cosmic in the BMW M8, 32%. Chrysalid, who is in the other Chevrolet, 32.4%. Leechard, who is running way back here in ninth in the Dodge Viper, 32%. Water T is at 21%, so he's actually running mediums in the very first run here. P1R Habit back here in 11th position, 27%. So he's likely on softs, but has a setup that is not very aggressive on tire life. And then Rex Style is at 30%. So, oh wait, does he have engine damage? No, he does not. So it looks like Water Tea is the only driver on an alternate strategy here in this very first stint. Everyone else is running all softs early on here at Nurburgring Nordschleife, as our top two continue to run nose to tail. F1R Moonrise trying to keep ESV Barcode behind him right now. And the gap from these two to the rest of the grid continues to just get bigger and bigger. We know that both these drivers are very aggressive. They're both willing to put their noses in places you normally can't do. These two drivers are expertly crafted drivers, almost like they've been made in a machine to be very, very fast and competent at Nurburgring Nordschleife. They are very good at lap times, but when it comes to traffic, they understand the risks, and they're willing to take the risk because they know that not taking the risk will pay off worse. Oh, the Chevy got tires in the dirt. Here comes the Dodge trying to wrap it around the long way around on the outside corner. The Chevy does have enough power to stay alongside, and now he backs out just before the corner, but he puts the bumper in the Dodge, and they're going to be almost side by side in the following corner, but it is Barcode who gets the position. Moonrise dropping tires in the dirt is all it took to get Barcode back in front. Big thing, though, is that Moonrise has superior straight line speed, and Moonrise is going to have the advantage of draft in a lot of the straightaways here. So this is not a done deal yet. This could still go back in Moonrise's favor. We don't know how long these two are going to stay on top of each other. But we're finally seeing what Barcode can actually do after he spent 9 laps on hard tires in stint 1, and just barely got a top 5 result, only off of the back of other drivers compromising and screwing up their strategies. Barcode dropped his tires in the dirt there just a little bit. Not quite nose to tail, and now they rush downhill here. Moonrise seems to be having a little bit more trouble holding the inside lines. Barcode not taking nearly as much speed into the corners means that he has a lot less time that he has to spend on the brakes, and he can hold the inside lines a little bit easier. It's the great dilemma of making a race car and setting up a race car. great straight line speed means that you will be one of, if not the best, in a driver versus driver combat. But sacrificing speed for better cornering ability will give you better lap times, better sector times, and may put you in a position where you never actually have to fight for position to begin with. Bit of dirt being kicked up there by Barcode. Moonrise in this nice straightaway has the draft and superior speed in the Chevrolet. Make something out of it. He looks to the inside. You don't want to go side by side coming to this upcoming corner, but Moonrise is going to try and commit to it. Does he go deep under braking? He does! They both go deep under braking, and somehow they both keep it on track! I don't know how in the world they both kept on track, but that was fantastic! But Moonrise was the one who had to back out because it was the longer way around the corner. They'll be just about nose to tail on the run up here to the carousel. Hiya Cranky is still not too far off from this duo. These two have spent just enough time fighting with each other that Hiya Cranky is close enough that if these two wrecked and sent each other into the dirt or something, Cranky would be immediately right there in the middle of the fight with them. And now, through the twisties once more, the final third of the circuit. This is going to be where we anticipate Barcode will have the best shot at opening the gap between himself and Moonrise. As the Dodge Viper is a little bit better in these corners than what we have seen Moonrise been able to do in his Chevy. But if Moonrise can stay within drafting range, he would still try and pull up alongside and make the move again down the long back straightaway, but he has to stay close enough to keep the draft active. If he falls more than 0.7 of a second out, he will lose the draft. And between these two, you will still want to be the first driver in pit lane. You're still just about nose to tail. There's a little bit more gap between, which is good news for Moonrise, because it means that if he misses a corner, he doesn't immediately plow right into Barcode's rear. Coming up to the mini carousel. You're watching two of the best drivers within the Forza Motorsport community, representing two of the biggest, and most problematic, I would argue, teams in the community, going at it here at the most famous racing circuit in the world, a circuit that is tipping over 100 years old now. They head down the straightaway. Moonrise should be close enough to have a draft off of Barcode, but is he close enough to make the move, or is he just going to be stuck behind the rear wing of the Dodge by the time they get to the braking zone? I don't think he's going to be able to make the move. There's just not going to be enough time. Not this time. He is there, but he is not going to be able to pull up alongside. Barcode broke a little bit early, forcing Moonrise to brake early and deny the Chevy any chance of making the overtake. And now our leaders both duck it into the pits. We're going to go ahead and knock out Twitch mandated ad break. When we come back, we'll see who's ahead after pit stops. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to Nurburgring Nordschleife. Your leader is Waterty, as he elected to start this race on the medium tires. The only driver to do so. We have also had our first disconnect as NDL Shadow has dropped out. So now the highest running NDL driver is Togue in 5th position right now. 4th overall when you factor in that Waterty is on an alternate strategy. And we're coming up to the dilemma that we had in Stint 1. Not as extreme, but still, driver on an alternate strategy running much slower than our actual leaders, about to be caught. Moonrise will have to figure out a way to get by Waterty, and he'll need to do it quickly so Barcode can't nip him as well. Barcode had Moonrise's number at the end of the last 2-lap stint here, as he's coming up on the Mercedes. Very early in the lap is he coming up on the Mercedes. And again, this is the only driver like this, so once they clear Waterty, it's done for. And Waterty goes off. That's not even going to be remotely an issue for either driver, as Waterty slides off circuit, could not keep the car under him. The tires are just too worn out, and he does not seem to have any confidence. He's going to be caught by Haya Cranky very shortly here. But meanwhile, at the front, Barcode trying to see what he can do to run down on P1R Moonrise. NDL Togue runs in 5th position. The highest running McLaren at the moment. You can see Haya Cranky just a little bit up the road from him, but needs to figure out a way to close down. For Haya Cranky, he's going to have to navigate a fellow Mercedes in the form of Waterty. And try and navigate traffic who are on an alternate tire strategy here. In the middle of the Nordschleife is always going to be one of the most frustrating things you can ever imagine. Still hasn't caught him yet, though. Meanwhile, at the front, the gap between Moonrise and Barcode continues to slowly close down. It's only about a car length and a third between the two of them. Catching Moonrise is going to be one thing, though. Passing him will be a different issue altogether. But we have seen Barcode made the pass before. These two drivers are not afraid to put bumpers to each other. They're not afraid to get elbows out and be a little bit physically aggressive with each other. They are not going to wreck each other. I feel very confident in saying that Moonrise and Barcode are not going to wreck each other. But they're definitely willing to get a little bit physical in this fight, if need be. Big thing might end up being that if Barcode is close enough to get the draft off of Moonrise in this big twisty section, it could set it up very well in the next 2 braking zones. Meanwhile, real quickly, Haya Cranky is pulled up alongside Waterty. He's trying to go the long way around. It's not recommended to go the long way around if you can help it, but he does not want to be held up anymore by a car on worse tires, and he is by. He has gotten around him the long way. So great job on Haya Cranky's part. As long as he doesn't get hit from behind by Waterty missing a braking zone, he should be good. Yeah, it looks like he'll be good. Meanwhile, back at the front, as our leaders come rushing up to the carousel once again. The gap continues to gradually close. Oh, and the Chevys missed it! The Chevy has massively missed it! The Dodge was compromised, couldn't get the run out! They made contact coming out of the carousel! The Chevy still has it, but the Dodge is right behind a massive miscalculation by Moonrise! And now Barcode is right underneath his rear wing! Rushing back up to the top of the hill, the highest point in Sector 3. And now they begin rushing downhill. These are the corners where Barcode is at his strongest at. Bit of a pit twitch and a slide, some oversteer and countersteer from Barcode, but he still stays right behind Moonrise. You can see that the Chevy has to brake so much earlier compared to the Dodge. Does the Dodge driver, ESV Barcode, have enough confidence to go for a gigantic lunge, a gigantic dive into one of these corners to try and get the position? Does he even feel like Moonrise is holding him up enough to warrant it? Or does he feel that their lap times are close enough that it's just fine for him to run in Moonrise's draft for this circuit, and he could just wait for another lap? They are so close nose to tail that the ticker can't seem to figure out who's ahead, but we can visibly see that for the moment it is still Moonrise running ahead of Barcode. You gotta be careful with the outside curb here. It's a great way to gain some extra speed, but if you don't hit it right, you're gonna slide off. Out of the mini carousel, the Chevy very nearly goes into the dirt, but the Dodge was a little bit too conservative and didn't carry a lot of speed out of the corner. This is the final corner before they get onto the big straightaway. Not quite nose to tail, and the Dodge is close enough to the Chevrolet that'll get a nice draft off of Moonrise. Barcode using the draft to pull up alongside. They're in a dead heat now as they head up the straightaway. Does the Dodge clear the Chevrolet? No, because now the top speed of the Chevrolet is coming back into the fray. They are still in a dead even heat as they go down the straightaway. Now the Chevy is starting to pull back ahead, and the Chevy clears the Dodge. The Chevy is back ahead now. And at the end of the third lap of racing, it looks like it's still going to be Moonrise. But Barcode is right behind. Barcode's going to get another big draft as he tries to go for another dive going into turn one this time by. He thought of it, but would not commit to it. Water Tea finally jumping into the pit lane. As our top two continue to run very intensely, nose to tail here. Could this be a representation of what we're going to see in a week's time at Toro's 24 Hours of Nurburgring? Maybe not in these exact same cars, definitely not built to the same spec, but is this a preview of what we'll see in a week's time? Putting the bumper, and now Moonrise gets a little bit of a shove. He's going to hold the inside line. Barcode's going to try the long way around. He can brake nice and late into the corner. Does not have what it takes. There's not enough room here to do the crossover, but Moonrise slides the rear of his Chevy over to block just in case Barcode committed to it. They still stay nose to tail as they come now down the last straightaway in the GP section of the circuit. Draft again is going to let Barcode pull alongside. He's going to try and go the long way around. He can go nice and deep into the corner, but has to back out so they don't send each other into the dirt. They do not change position yet. Now back into Nordschleife once more. Again, when it comes to overall event win, Moonrise has a gigantic advantage over Barcode because he finished way ahead of Barcode in Stint 1. Barcode could win this stint, and Moonrise could still be well on the way to winning the event overall. But right now, this might not have anything to do with overall event win. This may just be trying to prove that, hey, I'm a better driver than you. No, I'm the better driver than you. I feel that Barcode has a massive advantage in being in a better car, but Moonrise is doing a great job utilizing the very limited strengths of that Chevrolet to keep Barcode behind. Rushing uphill, once again, over the jump. Still nose to tail. This time it's the Dodge, the Barcode, who drops tires into the dirt, but he still keeps enough speed and stays close enough to the Chevrolet to maintain draft off of him. Coming up to the next hill here. And Leachard now lags out. big slide. You can hear the rear tires of the Dodge Viper squealing under heavy braking, but he has just enough grip in the front tires to pull himself through the corners and stay right under Moonrise's rear wing. About 40% of the way through the lap right now. Oh, they both dropped tires in the dirt there. High Cranky runs in third position, but he has gradually been losing touch with his top two. Not a great run through those S's there as they come out of the slowest corner in Nordschleife. It's still just about nose to tail. Barcode seems to have reined his aggression in just a little bit. He's not trying to force his nose of his Viper in corners where it doesn't belong. He seems to have come to an understanding that Moonrise is faster, or at least fast enough, that just staying behind him is fine for now. So he's just content to run right behind Moonrise, just put consistent, long-running pressure on Moonrise and try to get Moonrise to make a mistake so Barcode can capitalize. How will this dynamic change when it gets to nighttime, though? This stint will end under nighttime circumstances, we believe. Here comes a move. The Dodge Viper is trying to go what will be the long way around here. He'll have the ability to brake really late into this corner. Is he going to commit to it? No! He has to back out, and Moonrise barely holds on to stop, and Moonrise came so close to sliding out circuit there. A games of inches, maybe even fraction of inches at some points. And Barcode really gets into Moonrise and pushes him very wide there in that heavy braking zone. Now they rush down into the carousel once again. Moonrise has to hit the carousel. He can't afford to slide wide, but Barcode hits him in the rear. But Moonrise keeps the car on the track through the carousel as Barcode, who backs way out after hitting Moonrise, and the gap massively swings open in Moonrise's favor again. An inversion of what we saw last circuit. They should be fine, though. This should be the point where Barcode's Dodge Viper's biggest advantage, the preservation of tire life and its general ability to get extra grip on corner, mid-corner and corner exit, along with his ability to brake later, should allow Barcode to close the gap back down on Moonrise. He'll be right underneath the rear wing of Moonrise's Chevrolet, likely just before they get onto the straight again. Just about nose to tail again, though. Barcode drops a tire off into the dirt. Still, the gap is closing down. Downhill into a very heavy braking zone, followed by a fast right-hander. Then a left-hander that you want to take as close to flat as possible. This little straight section, your car is just bouncing around as the surface is so uneven through here. But look at this, Barcode is right there behind Moonrise again. We know they're likely going to be pitting at the end of this circuit. Now they accelerate forward. One more braking zone, then they get onto the straightaway. Barcode's close enough that using the draft, he might be able to pull up alongside Moonrise again. We saw him do that before. Because he tried to do it again before they get into the pit lane. Down the straightaway once more. The draft working in the Dodge Viper's favor will give him a great amount of extra speed. But he may not have enough to pull up alongside of Moonrise's Chevy again. Just about nose to tail. Does he look to the inside? He is. He's going to go to the the left side of the Chevy. But can't get alongside. He can get right there, but cannot get alongside. Does he break Blake? Does he hit the Chevy? Oh, if there was contact, neither of them benefit from it. And they're both going to jump into the pits this time by. Accelerating now into the pit lane. pit stops. We're going to knock out an ad break. We'll be back momentarily here to see who's going to be the leader after stops. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we want to welcome you back here to Nurburgring Nordschleife for the final P1R SEC Enduro event of the season, the 10th race on their calendar, Nurburgring Nordschleife. F1R Moonrise won, Stint won by a gigantic margin over the rest of the field, and Barcode was a distant 5th. But Barcode has been closing the gap back down. He actually has a functioning strategy this time. Instead of trying to run 5 laps on hard tires, he is mirroring Moonrise's strategy, 2 laps on softs pit, 2 laps on softs pit. And these two have been putting together some insane laps. But the second round of pit stops have been completed, and there is a new advantage that we are finding that the Chevrolet of F1R Moonrise has. It takes less time for Moonrise to complete a pit stop than it is for ESV Barcode. My guess is that Moonrise has to put a little bit more fuel in the tank. Maybe he's putting 50% in the tank instead of the 40% that the Dodge Viper is doing. And then when they both pit, if Moonrise already has 9% of the fuel in the tank, but Barcode only has 1%, theoretically, it may take the Chevy less time to fill up than it is taking the Dodge Viper. That may have something to do with it. Less time to fill up because you don't have to put as much fuel in. Yes, that would hurt Moonrise a small amount because he's basically carrying extra fuel in the tank as ballast that he never really gets to use, but it's shortening up the pit stop, and it has meant that the gap between Moonrise and Barcode seems to get a little bit bigger every single time they come out of the pit lane. And then Barcode has to spend the next 2 laps running like a bat out of hell, or like bat out of a bat cave, to try and run down on Moonrise and start taking the fight to him. Your third place driver is ZR Haya Cranky, who is running a strategy mirroring the top 2, but he has nothing close to the pace of the top 2. Still, Haya Cranky brought home a 4th place finish in Stint 1, on track to a 3rd place finish here in Stint 2. So this could be one of the best results for the Mercedes thus far this season with the way it is looking. Then you have Indiel Togue, who is the highest of the McLarens thus far, running around in 4th position. Crislin is your next highest, and the only other Chevy in the event running in 5th. Just a little bit behind him is Indiel Cosmic in the BMW M8, followed by Indiel Ardno in another McLaren. After that is Water T, who is in this Mercedes. He is running an alternate strategy. He ran the first stint of the race on medium tires and has put on soft tires, been going all soft since, but he seems to really struggle as his tires fall off, which is why he's way down in 8th. Then you have P1R Habit, who is way away from the rest of the field, just not been able to keep up with anyone. And then Rex Style is running dead last, completely off pace compared to everybody else. This has absolutely no pace whatsoever. However, as Leaker and Indiel Shadow have already dropped out, Rex Style is at minimum guaranteed a 10th place result here in this stint. As once again, we look back at our top 2 to see if there is any serious chance that Barcode can close in on Moonrise. Oh, there you are. The gap does not seem to be closing. One thing that will help Moonrise out, he has the power that anytime they get onto the straightaway, he can blitz away from Barcode, and Barcode will not have the draft to help keep him there. So Barcode has to rely sheerly on his car's own natural ability through the corners. He does not have the draft of the Chevy ahead helping him out. The ESV team made the swap to the Dodge Viper in time for Catalunya, after it was very, very obvious with the way that the Bathurst race played out, that the Dodge Viper had a ridiculous advantage in tire life compared to every other car. And I've said this for the last 3 events I've said this, I'm going to say it again. The biggest plus that the Dodge Viper has going for it is that, and it's not only a GT thing, it applies to every racing category in this game where they have a Dodge Viper. The Viper is a very torquey car. There's a lot of potential for top end speed, but it doesn't ever really realize the majority of that potential. That means that it has less speed it's carrying into the corners. That gives it 2 advantages. 1, it can brake a little bit later because it doesn't need to be on the brakes as much. And 2, because it doesn't need to be on the brakes as long, it doesn't burn up its tires nearly as much as any other car in its category. The Dodge Viper has some ridiculous advantages in every category. It doesn't matter if we're talking about the 2008 road-going SRT. It doesn't matter if we're talking about the 1999 street-going Dodge Viper. It doesn't matter if we're talking about the GT3 Viper we're running now. All Dodge Vipers in this game have this same exact ridiculous advantage. They do not burn up the front tires because you do not get nearly as high of a top end. It has traded out top speed for good acceleration, and it has plenty of grip in these tires to hold on and not break a lot of traction and overheat the tires while using all that acceleration. So the Dodge Viper has a massive advantage. But here at Nurburgring, the bigger the track is, the less and less an advantage in tire life is going to come into play. You can see Wreck Style way back there in 10th, already about a third of a lap down after we're about a third of the way through this event. He has a massive tire life advantage over everyone else, but he just can't make anything of it. On a relatively short, small lap, something like Kyalami, where we were at last month, a tire advantage is gigantic. Here at Nürburgring, the tire advantage is a lot more minimized. I won't say that Nürburgring Nordschleife is designed to counter Dodge Vipers. That would be absurd. The Dodge Viper came around about 65 years after Nürburgring Nordschleife was created. But still, this is probably the best counter. I don't know who Barcy is. If you mean if Barcode is supposed to be Barcy, no. Moonrise and Barcode are running the exact same strategy right now. They both are doing 2 laps on softs, pitting, 2 laps on softs, pitting. And the gap between them has only grown. Yeah, the gap between them has only grown because Barcode no longer has the draft off of Moonrise. Oh, nope, I take that back. I will say very good job on the part of the viewers to notice that, yes, it looks like Barcode has put on a harder tire compound than what Moonrise has right now. Moonrise still on the softs. Barcode looks like he may be on the medium. So no, I will say good job to NDL Stock Ash for noticing that difference. I had not noticed the difference. I thought that Barcode was just losing ground to Moonrise because he had lost the draft. So no, I will say great job to the viewer to noticing that in this scenario. This also means that Haya Cranky, who is running a strategy similar to Moonrise, all softs all the way through, is going to be able to run down on Barcode, and if Barcode spends a ridiculous amount of time fighting with Haya Cranky, it could end up really messing with things. So, with the way this is playing out, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to knock out Twitch mandated ad break very early now, so that way, when we come up to the next round of pit stops, we can actually see how they play out normally. And I'm not going to have to do an ad break just at the same time. I was willing to do that earlier because I knew everyone's going to end up in roughly the same position. Now we have some significant variety and strategy. I'm going to knock out an ad break here, and hopefully when we come back, we'll see if Haya Cranky can catch Barcode before this lap is over. We'll be back momentarily here at Nürburgring Nordschleife. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll welcome you back here to Nurburgring Nordschleife. ESV Barcode, who had been fighting dead even with Moonrise for last two tire stints, has jumped onto an alternate strategy where he's put a little bit more fuel in, ran a little bit harder tire, trying to get off strategy to make something happen here. This is letting Moonrise run away from him, and Barcode is at risk of falling into the grasp of Haya Cranky. But it is only a risk, and even if Haya Cranky catches Barcode, Cranky will still have to pit at the end of this lap. The big thing, though, is that Barcode spends a significant amount of time fighting with Haya Cranky, bleeding off a lot of time in a battle with this Mercedes. It would work out fantastically in favor of the Chevrolet of P1R Moonrise. Oh, and Haya Cranky sliding off into the dirt like that, it's not going to help his chances at running down on ESV Barcode. A little bit farther back, Chrysalid has been holding on to fourth over Indiel Togue pretty well. Ardno has gradually been losing touch with him. Same with Indiel Cosmic, who has completely lost touch with the drivers ahead. Water T has continued to hemorrhage time as this event has gone on, just has not had the ability to keep tires under him as the event goes on. It's not been a bad strategy, it does not have the speed or the capability to handle the car when the tires burn off, and has been the most frustrating thing for that Mercedes driver. Still, the gap at the front continues to shift. Let's go ahead and look at once they come up to the carousel, we'll look at the gap between the top three and get an idea on if Haya Cranky actually has a shot at catching Barcode before Haya Cranky and Moonrise have to pit at the end of this lap. You can see Haya Cranky in some of the shots now, while as we follow Barcode around here. Barcode trying to set himself up to potentially skip an entire pit stop by the end of the event here by running mediums right now. If he does mediums again in the final half of the event, he could probably cut out an entire pit stop. But as you'll notice, the shadows are getting longer. The sun is preparing to set here, and we saw at Kailami, the handling of the cars changed very, very dramatically as the sun set. So we could be looking at a scenario here where a big deciding factor in how this race plays out between Moonrise and Barcode may not just be tire strategy, but how differently the cars handle in the night compared to the day. About 40% of the way through the event right now. Technically a little bit more than that. I forgot to gauge the gap between our second and third place cars. I do apologize for that. Well, the gap continues to close down between second and third, but as we ride on board with Haya Cranky, he still cannot see Barcode around the majority of the circuit here, and Haya Cranky will have to pit at the end of this lap, so I think Barcode is safe from being under attack here from the Mercedes driver, which works out well for Barcode because that means that he just only has to focus on lap times and also has to hope that obviously Moonrise cannot catch him on track, and hope that being on a pit strategy offset will let Barcode run in enough clean air, turn enough laps in clean air that he'll maintain position. Moonrise is pitting at the end of this lap. We know that for a fact. Barcode is staying out. We know that for a fact as well. Hiya Cranky will be pitting this lap. We know that as well. The question is, what is the gap going to look like between Moonrise and Barcode once they come out of pit lane? Real quickly, let's also look at the distance penalties right now. Moonrise has no distance penalties. Barcode and High Cranky both have distance penalties. Chrysalid has no penalties. Togue, Ardno, and Cosmic all have penalties. Water Tea, Habit, and Rexstyle all have no penalties right now. So about half and half of the drivers who are left on circuit right now when it comes to penalties, as Barcode goes to the lead as we anticipated. But again, now, while he doesn't have a lot of fuel left in the Viper, he's got very worn out tires. This will be his slowest lap thus far, while Moonrise will be coming out with more fuel in the car, but with nice fresh tires and still running in clean air. Already Moonrise out of pit lane, making something of it. The gap is absolutely gigantic in Barcode's favor. But we do not yet know who's going to have the advantage between them. Water Tea has fallen to 8th, but he may be in a strategy battle with P1R Habit, as Habit's going to be pitting this time, but we think Water Tea will be staying out another lap. Barcode about to come up. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006, 1007, 1008, 1009, 1010, 1011, 1012, 1013, 1014, 1015, 1016, 1017, 1018, 1019, 2020, 2021, 2022. So I'm counting about 22 seconds right now between Barcode and Moonrise on track. But it is a gap that is going to continue to shrink as the lap continues here. P1R Habit has completed his pit stop now. So for the moment, Water Tea secures 8th position, but it does look like it's a strategy battle. Habit is slower, but Water Tea is much more accident prone, and they are both pitting on alternate laps. So I will try to keep AI on the fight for 8th in case this battle in the top 2 kind of goes nowhere. But right now, I think Water Tea has the advantage, as we are almost at the halfway point of our event here at Nurburgring Nordschleife. Almost halfway through the entire Nurburgring Nordschleife Enduro that we are running today. Here on Nonstop Nurburgring November. Again, assuming nothing crazy happens, I will be back next week to cover Tora's Nurburgring Enduro. That'll be coming up very shortly here. Bit of a slide there out of the rear of that Corvette, as Moonrise is just trying to bang together some fantastic laps to close the gap down. Again, Moonrise has a massive advantage in overall distance over Barcode. For the overall event win, Moonrise is still the favorite. Barcode would have to win the stint by a gigantic margin and then replicate that again in stint 2 to have a shot to steal what would be the 4th straight ESV victory in an Enduro. Granted, I would argue that the circumstances that won the ESV team, the Bathurst Enduro, was I'm going to say it was not decided on track. Let's just put it to you like that. but there is a very legitimate chance that if Moonrise has a mistake, if he starts sliding off, banging into walls, going into the dirt, Barcode might be able to make this 4 straight victories by the ESV team in this series, the last 4 Enduros in this series. But they'll have to beat the F1R team, a team that I imagine there is no love lost after the controversy that went down in the Spa Enduro that was run with the touring cars about a month and a half ago. Okay, well, as our leader Barcode is about to come up to the carousel, we're going to go ahead and use the thing that I like to do to try and map the distance, the time difference between the two of them. I'm going to try and count when I see Barcode's car go off of the pavement here now. Count from that point. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006, 1007, 1008, 1009, 1010, 1011, 1012, 1013, 1014, 1015, 1016, 1017, 1018, 1019, 1020, 1021, about 22 seconds almost between our top 2 right now. So it does not seem like the gap is shrinking at the rate that we anticipated it to. You have to wonder, is Moonrise running medium tires as well? No, it does not look like he is. He is on track to be running on soft tires again. And I hate to say it, but High Cranky is basically completely fallen out of contention for the event win. Unless Barcode or Moonrise have some disconnects, it is literally just between them. It's a shame, because I really would have liked to see High Cranky win this. That ZR team has been one of the few teams that has actually made an effort to attend every single event in this series since the season opener at Daytona. Most of the other entrants have missed races or have gone through complete driver lineup changes where the drivers who started the season are not the same drivers we're seeing here near the end. The ZR team that High Cranky is on is one of the few that has gone through minimal changes, and they have been a prolonged member in this series. But when you're fighting against 2 of the best drivers in the Forza Motorsport community, you basically have to hope that something crazy happens. Generally speaking, once you are in one of the best positions, you are not ever going to be defeated, barring some absolutely crazy things happening. And right now, it looks like it is a bit of a strategy battle between Barcode and Moonrise, and it may be the case that Barcode might be winning the strategy. But the sun has just about completely set, the track temperatures are going to drop, and with colder track, what does that mean? It means that it will be harder for the tires to maintain grip, but it also means that as long as you're not excessively sliding the tires trying to find the grip, you could make your tires last just a little bit longer, which could have an interesting knock-on effect. We are anticipating that the drivers will get about a third of a lap extra at the end of the event. And so it doesn't matter what happens, everyone is likely going to be pushing to very worn tires near the very tail end of the event today. In all 3 stints, we already saw that in Stint 1. We're likely going to see that here in Stint 2. And again in Stint 3. But this one, Stint 2, will be ending under nighttime conditions, where as long as you're not sliding the tires a lot, the cooler temps may mean that your tires will last a bit longer. ESV Barcode finally coming into pit lane. Here comes Moonrise. We are almost positive that Moonrise is going to stay out on track for now. We think that he'll be pitting the next time by, but what is the gap going to look like between the 2 of them? As Moonrise rushes down the start-finish straightaway. And at the line, Moonrise still leads as they cross the start-finish line. Barcode still is in pit road. Finally, he comes out. The gap now swings massively back in Moonrise's favor. We look at Barcode's fuel. He's got 50% in the tank. We don't really know yet if he's going to be running mediums or soft tires. We'll have to wait a little bit to get an idea on that. But now Barcode will be the one on fresh tires, and Moonrise will be on old tires. And we are just about halfway through, just under halfway through Stint 2. Just about to hit halfway across this entire event. And while we are here, while we are in this little bit of a waiting period, I do want to go ahead and look back to another driver near the rear of the grid, to P1R Habit, and I do want to say thank you very much to P1R Habit. He was the driver slash P1R team member who reached out to me back in December, or was it November? I don't remember exactly when. It was when the Bathurst dropped for the game, so I'm guessing maybe that was November. But he was the one who reached out to me asking for me to cover a 2-hour promotional event, no points, no championship, just for kicks, a 2-hour enduro that they were going to host, this group was going to host around Bathurst. And I was willing to jump in, help with them. It was actually the first stream that I was able to cover for Forza when my channel was properly monetized as well. But yeah, Habit was happy to have me on, invited me back to cover the P1R SEC Championship throughout this year of 2025. While I've not been able to cover all 3 stints in all of the races, I have covered at minimum at least 1 stint in every single event in the series. And it's all thanks to P1R Habit. He's been nice enough, outside of the times where he's had some real life issues, he's been nice enough to reach out, ask to make sure that everything was good on my end, trying to make sure that everything was coordinated early on. It has been an absolute pleasure to follow for what is a very unique series idea, running a year-long series of only 6-hour endurance races. I am not familiar with any other series, any other group in Forza that does the same thing, combining the strengths of a championship over a long period and the strengths of endurance races. But these guys are doing that, and it is all thanks to Habit that I am here. So I do want to say thank you to this man in particular, along with P1R Turk, who was the other driver that reached out. P1R Turk is the other one that has reached out and helped a lot to get me pull up into everything and gain everything running here. Anyways, with that in mind, let's go ahead and look back at the grid once more. F1R Moonrise, accelerating downhill. He is the leader at the moment on worn tires. Barcode is trying to make something work on an alternate strategy. I think, I can't prove it, but I have a feeling that Barcode is on another set of medium tires. So Barcode going forward, maybe trying to minimize his pit stops. He's going for slower lap times, but trying to minimize pit stops right now. We did see after the first 2 rounds on circuit that, yes, the Chevy spends less time in pit lane than the Dodge Viper. So maybe Barcode is rationalizing out, realizing, well, I can't beat Moonrise on track because pitting will always put me back behind him. So I need to reduce the amount of time I'm wasting on pit lane, so that way that advantage that Moonrise has over me is negated. Haya Cranky is starting to close back in on Barcode as Barcode drops 2 tires into the dirt. So yes, I'm moderately convinced that Barcode is on medium tires and Haya Cranky is still running softs. And you can see the 2 of them sharing large chunks of the racetrack right now. Most of the battles on track have been resolved, but this is the interesting one to keep an eye on. As we ride on board with Haya Cranky, we're going to go ahead and knock out a Twitch main dad break, and when we come back, we might see a move for 2nd position made on the track here at Nurburgring Nordschleife. Halfway through the middle stint here in this endurance event. God, it is so bloody good riding on board when someone hits that carousel perfectly. It's so good. It looks so nice. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to Nurburgring Nordschleife. A fight for second is starting to brew here as Hayek Cranky is running down ESV Barcode. Barcode trying to work on an alternate strategy, hoping to use that to clip P1R Moonrise near the end of the race here. But Barcode may be falling back into the grasp of third place Hayek Cranky in the process. Mind you, Hayek Cranky and Moonrise are both very likely to pit at the end of this lap. While Barcode will stay out for another 2 laps, we believe. And night has completely fallen here in the green hell. Reminder, I will still be here to cover Stint 3, which will happen about 45 to 50 minutes after the end of this year's Stint 2. And then, assuming no last-minute changes happen, it does look like I'll be covering a NASCAR event for another league a little bit later after that as well. So we're looking at about 8-9 hours of broadcasting today on this channel. So I hope you all enjoyed motors racing as much as I do here. It does not look like Hayek Cranky is going to be able to catch Barcode before the end of this lap, though. Although he has most definitely closed the gap down, but he is not close enough to get alongside the Dodge Viper of ESV Barcode. Moonrise will be pitting this time. We are just about guaranteed for that to happen, as he is using just the strategy of going all softs all the way through. He doesn't have a lot of fuel left in the car, but he's going to jump into the pits this time by. Licks the outside wall just before coming into the pits, and here he comes into the pit lane. ESV Barcode will take the lead of the race back as Hayek Cranky will go ahead and pit as well. Here goes Hayek Cranky into this pit stops, into the pit lane. Barcode flies down the straightaway this time. And will take the lead back. We believe that most of the rest of the field will pit this lap as well. The only other driver we think will be the exception will be Water T, as Water T went medium tires in the very first stint, so he is on a 1-lap offset to the rest of the field. He is in a prolonged fight with P1R Habit, as they are on alternate strategies right now, but it does look like Water T has the advantage over P1R Habit at this stage of the event. Moonrise already out of pit lane and already going through the circuit. So this now we will have 2 laps where Barcode is on much more worn tires than Moonrise. Moonrise will have the fresher tires for the next 2 laps, bare minimum. Might be 3. If Moonrise is put on mediums, he'll still have fresher tires for 2 laps. But I think Moonrise will probably put on softs. It does seem like running all softs all the way through is the winning ticket. Although Moonrise did run some stints on the mediums in the first stint of the race. It's hard because I use stints to explain both tire stints and then stints to explain the 2-hour racing blocks of period that we have. I do apologize for constantly interchanging the terms, but realistically, I should probably be saying tire runs, but in my mind, it's just easier for me to think tire stints. I don't know why. Also, credit to Moonrise, who went stint 1 without getting any penalties whatsoever, distance penalties whatsoever, so that will be an extra point in the P1R team's bag, even though championship is already locked up coming into the event. And we want to say good job to the NDL Black Pearl team for locking up the championship just by virtue of starting this final event. Ardno hangs out in 5th position, but Togue is not too far behind. If something goes wrong for Ardno, Togue will be right there to capitalize. I'll also say good job on Grizzly. Grizzly had a very aggressive and not very great run in Stint 1, but in this stint, he's been running a lot more laps in clean track, not really having to be super aggressive, and it shows he is the second highest driver of everyone. He does not have distance penalties. While he does not have the speed to keep up with Haya Cranky, he is looking like he should be. It looks like he should be able to cruise to a 4th place finish very, very easily today. Let's go ahead and use the points of interest cameras to time the gap between 1st and 2nd here on the circuit. We'll be seeing them momentarily. $1,001, $1,002, $1,003, $1,004, $1,005, $1,006, $1,007, $1,008, $1,009, $1,010, $1,011. So about 11 seconds between our top 2 drivers right now. So Moonrise is closing the gap down, but will it be by enough? Does he have enough to catch and clear Barcode before they both pit again? Again, Moonrise on another stint on the soft tires. Barcode is on medium tires that already have a lap of wear on. This will, for all intents and purposes, be the stint where Barcode will lose the most amount of time to Moonrise, and they're both going to be pitting at the same time at the end of this anyway. Barcode has effectively cut out an entire pit stop, and we saw earlier in the first 2 fuel and tire runs of this stint that Moonrise's Chevy spent less time in the pit lane than Barcode. This is likely the response that Barcode has to try and negate Moonrise's pit stop advantage over his car. But it's going to take us probably about another 13 minutes or so to see how it actually plays out. Floodlights really make the circuit look very, very distinctly different in various parts here. Not really a lot to talk about right now. We're literally just kind of holding in a prolonged holding pattern. But there is this here. NDL Togue is gradually closing down on NDL Ardno. And these 2 drivers have been paying at the same time every time thus far. But are they on different tire strats at this stage of the event, I have to wonder. Nope, they're still on the same tire strats. But it does look like Ardno is slipping back into NDL Togue's grasp. So we may have a fight for 5th on our hooves. Out of the corner, flying down. Our leaders are about to come onto the big back straightaway here. But the gap between them is so large right now, we're not really going to gain anything from just staring at them for a prolonged period of time. And I do want to go ahead and look at some of the battles farther down on the grid. Primarily this one here. As Ardno and Togue can see each other getting bigger in their mirror/windscreen. Mind you, this is a pair of McLarens, I believe. They're both McLarens, I'm pretty sure. Cosmic is way away from this duo, and while Crislin is a little ways up the road, I don't really think either of them have the chance to catch Crislin. And they are close enough. Togue is close enough to get a draft off of Ardno. Or I think he's close enough to get a draft off Ardno. If he can get a draft off Ardno, I don't think he is. He might not be close enough. No, it looks like Ardno is actually pulling on Togue in a straight line. So maybe Ardno has a setup that is lower on downforce, giving him more straight line speed, but it's enough that Togue cannot get the draft off of that McLaren ahead. Oh, I might want to take that back because he caught him. He's caught the draft. He's just now caught the draft near the very end of the straight. He's got to be right under Ardno's rear wing under braking. Gets right underneath him. And now they come onto the start-finish straightaway. Another long straight where the draft will be in favor of Togue. Is he going to try and make a move? He's thinking about it. He's going to look to the inside. It's a drag race. McLaren on McLaren action as they cross the start-finish line. And Togue has it. He'll clear Ardno by the time they get to the braking zone of turn 1. And Togue moves up into the 5th position on circuit. Meanwhile, at the front, ESV Barcode continues to lead. Gonna try and calculate the time between Barcode and Moonrise once again here. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006, 1007, 1008, 1000. About 9 seconds is what I'm getting here. So that's roughly what it was earlier. Has this strategy worked out in Barcode's favor? Granted, they still have the entirety of Nordschleife to go through here. But has the strategy worked out? Has Barcode snookered Moonrise? On the back of sheer pace. Again, both of these two will be pitting at the end of this lap, we believe. But despite having better tires, Moonrise does not seem to be closing on Barcode at the rate that we are expecting him to. He is closing, but not 9 seconds a lap closing. You have to wonder how much of it comes down to the Dodge being able to preserve tire life. If he's not sliding the tires around in the Dodge Viper at all, especially now that the track is cooler, that could end up being huge. It does not sound like Barcode's having a good time, but it looks like he's having a good time. His lines are not crazy, but every time he goes by one of these cameras, you can audibly hear the tires squealing on that thing. All right, let's prepare the points of interest camera here so we can try and measure the gap between first and second once more. $1,001, $1,002, $1,003, $1,004, $1,005, 1006, 1007, 1008. That's 8 seconds, so Moonrise has only closed 1 second on Barcode over about half of the Nordschleife. That's just... he's getting there, but he's not getting there fast enough. Barcode may have Moonrise's number. Real quickly, looking at the fuel and tire wear. Barcode is at 49.5, almost 50% wear. Moonrise is at 47.7. So for right now, Moonrise still has a very slight advantage in tire life, but by the time they come out of the carousel, their tire wear will basically zero out, but Moonrise will still have the advantage because he is on soft tires, and worn soft tires will still be faster than worn medium tires in the majority of circumstances. But as the percentage wear number between the two continue to come closer and closer to a 0% difference, the amount that Moonrise will be able to close on Barcode will go less and less. Also, Barcode, how much fuel does he have left in the car? 8.4%. And Moonrise, the amount of fuel that he has in the car, 8.1%. So they're both going to be just about empty in their fuel tank when they pit. I think this strategy may have worked out in Barcode's favor, unless we see Barcode just absolutely fall over a metaphorical cliff here in these final few corners. I think he's nipped Moonrise off the back of strategy, and more than anything else, off the back of the Dodge just being so much better on tire life. It's not a massive difference, but with Barcode cutting out an entire pit stop and negating the Chevy's biggest advantage in pit stops over him, the next biggest advantage on track still arguably goes to which car is better on tires, and that advantage should go back to Barcode, I would imagine. Ooh, going into the dirt like that is not going to help him do anything, though. But I think he has enough of a gap. He'll be fine. As long as he doesn't send it off circuit, he'll be perfectly fine, I imagine. Moonrise is still most definitely making hay, though. 57% wear on the fronts for Moonrise for Barcode. 55%. But now, as Barcode goes through some of these corners, you can audibly hear Moonrise's engine. There's just not enough time. Oh! And Barcode goes into the dirt coming into the straight. That's not going to help him. This is onto the straightaway where the Dodge is already weak, and now dropping tires in the dirt is just going to make him even weaker. That gap is big. It's shrinking, but it's still too big. They're both going to pit at the same time. Moonrise does typically close a bit of time down in pit lane compared to Barcode, but not this gap, which is probably about 7 seconds between the two of them. Maybe it's down to 5. The gap might be down to 5 seconds, but still, that would be in Barcode's favor here. I think Barcode's made this strategy work out. He has nipped Moonrise, and the crazy thing is, with there still being 36 minutes left in the event, there is enough time, potentially, for Barcode to do the exact same thing all over again. Another pair of medium stops to try and negate Moonrise pitting twice when Barcode would only be pitting once. Oh, but you can see that Moonrise still takes less time in pit lane, in the pit box, than Barcode did. So now the question is, what tires are they going to be on? If they're on the same tire compound, Barcode has the advantage, but Barcode's going to go back onto the mediums. The advantage, at least for a bit, swings back in Moonrise's favor. 40% in the Viper. That makes me think that Barcode's put on softs. 40%. Yeah, I think both of them have put on soft tires again. The gap has most definitely opened up in Barcode's favor, though, by about 4 to 4.5 seconds. Now, if they were both pitting at the same time for the rest of the event, if they both only pit, they both stay out for about 16 minutes then pit, then they'll both have 2 more stops. Moonrise can generally close by about 3/4 of a second every time they pit. The gap is at 4 seconds. Assuming all things are equal, Moonrise will not be within drafting range of Barcode by the end of this. And Barcode in a Dodge Viper is in a car that is better on tires. I think while it's not a massive advantage, I think these two are even enough on lap times that, barring one of them having an accident, I think Barcode has this stint won. I think he has this in the bag. So with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and ride on board for several corners on board with ESV Barcode and knock out a Twitch mandated ad break. We will be back momentarily here at Nurburgring Nordschleife. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we want to welcome you back here to Nurburgring Nordschleife as we ride on board with the Dodge of ESV Barcode. The ESV Dodges have won the last 2 Enduros. The ESV team in general has won the last 3 Enduros, although not all with the same entrant. They're trying to make it 4 ESV Enduro victories in a row to end the P1R SEC Championship off with, but F1R Moonrise is still in the area, could still make something happen. Barcode has to be absolutely perfect here to make this stick. Just a bit more than a quarter of the event left. Again, this is not like a Tour Enduro. These events go all the way until that race timer says 0000. Now, if you want more GT racing at Nürburgring Nordschleife, don't you worry. About 40 or so minutes, about 45 minutes after this broadcast ends, we will be coming back to you with the broadcast for Stint 3, the final stint of this event and the final stint of this P1R SEC season. And that one will start in the night and then go into daytime. Not really a lot else to talk about right now. Most of the other battles on track have been long decided. One driver is over a 1/10 of a mile in distance penalties. That is Indiel Ardno, who lost the position to Indiel Togue some time ago. Indiel Schall started near the front, but lagged out during the first round of pit stops. Leachford lagged out about a lap after that. As I say that, have we just had another exchange of position farther down? Yes, we have. Togue and Chrysalid have swapped spots. So Togue has jumped ahead of Chrysalid somehow. No, they're on the same tire strategy. Togue just seems to have had the ability to just run down Chrysalid. So Togue, on an alternate, on the same strategy as everyone else, is fighting his way up through the grid, slowly but surely. Mind you, he did start second. This was the entrant that started second, right behind Barcode and Moonrise. But he went off in lap 1 and fell all the way back to about the 9th spot, and it's been a very, very slow fight up the grid. I don't think he has enough time to catch Hyatt Cranky, but this was the driver who had the best shot at doing anything to Moonrise for the overall event win, and while he is on the comeback drive, it is not looking like he's going to be able to make this stick here. Ooh, big slide off there by Chrysalid. Well, Chrysalid's still on track to get a top 5 result in this stint, which is something he did not do in the prior stint. Granted, there is maybe a chance that Ardno catches Chrysalid. I will try to keep an eye on that now that I know that it is a possible concern. Real quickly, as we look at our top 2 again, that gap is maintained. It might have grown by a small amount, but I feel like the gap is about the same. I think this fight for the win is over. The Dodges, by virtue of going back-to-back medium stints, Barcode has negated the biggest loss, the biggest disadvantage that the Dodge has, and that is a longer pit stop than what the Chevy has. So that means that the next biggest advantage goes into Dodge's favor, which is superior tire management. The advantage is a lot less pronounced here compared to most other circuits, but it is still an advantage nonetheless. We're anticipating that Barcode and Moonrise will be pitting again with about 20 minutes left, and that is where things get interesting. Because if this holds up and they pit with 20 minutes left, they're going to be going a little bit farther than where this duo went back in stint 1 to the end. They'll be going a little bit deeper into the lap. Now, Moonrise didn't really have to worry last time. He had a massive gap over the second place driver, because the second place driver had an accident right before ending their last full final lap, which meant that Moonrise could manage some bad tires. This time, though, he won't have that. But if you put on mediums, are you going to be able to do anything? This final pit stop between Barcode and Moonrise could get really interesting. Do you put on softs or do you put on mediums? If you put on mediums, you won't really get the full advantage over the entire lap. But if you put on softs, that final half lap, you are going to be absolutely hemorrhaging time and throwing time away. And if one puts on softs and one puts on mediums, the gap is going to act like a slinky. Again, distance penalties factor into it as well. Last we checked, Moonrise had no distance penalties. Barcode had some. Not a lot, but he did have some. I think he had a little bit over 100 feet worth. Actually, let's go ahead and do a little bit of calculation, do a little bit of math. Calculate the distance penalty, the amount of feet that Barcode will lose here with the penalty that he currently has. Assuming that Moonrise doesn't get any more and Barcode doesn't get any more. As about 180 feet worth of penalties. And as I say that, NDL Togue has just gotten a ridiculous amount of time penalties somehow. So now only 4 drivers do not have distance penalties at this stage of the event. Just kind of in a prolonged holding period right now. Most of the battles on track have been resolved, although there is a possibility that if Toad makes a mistake, Chrysalid will catch them. And in distance penalty, Chrysalid does have the advantage over Toad right now. But that gap is slowly opening. There's also a possibility that Ardno catches Chrysalid, but I would not put big money on that. The gap is not closing at the rate you would need it to see that be a legitimate fight to the end. I'm not saying it can't happen. Weirder things have occurred, but I just don't see it happening. The other thing as well is that Chrysalid only has 1/5 of the distance penalties that Ardno has right now. So not only would Ardno have to catch Chrysalid, he would have to outrun him by at least 528 feet. Honestly, a little bit closer to 530 feet. Let's go ahead and time the distance between our leaders once again here, using one of the point of interest cameras. (1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005. It's about 5 seconds still. So it's not changed, or if it has, it has opened up very slightly in Barcode's favor. Again, we're anticipating that both these drivers will be pitting at the end of this lap. So they'll be pitting with about 19 minutes, 19 and a half minutes left in the event. The wild card question, will you put on mediums or do you put on softs on the run to the end here? You put on mediums, you won't get their full advantage, but you put on softs and you're going to push them past their ideal point. Neither tire is ideal. You're going to lose time somewhere. How are you going to choose to lose the time? Barcode probably has the advantage. He'll be paying first. He already has an advantage. He can afford to lose some time regardless in either direction. Barcode also is in a car that has been better at managing tires, so you could probably put on softs and potentially lose less time, but you would still be losing it. For Moonrise, if he puts on mediums, he's going to see the gap between himself and Barcode massively open up, and then he'll only have about 40% of a lap to try and close it back down. I feel like between these two, Moonrise has to run on the softs, unless he really just has no way to make the softs work. Barcode, though, I feel could run either mediums or softs and be okay. I think both of them will likely throw on softs to the end, and in that scenario, I think Barcode would have the advantage. But I feel like Barcode has a little bit more strategy, flexibility than what Moonrise has. Bit of a slide there out of the rear of that Dodge Viper. Real quickly looking at the tire life right now, 52% for the Dodge. For Moonrise in the Corvette, 54.9%. So that's about 2% difference. The other thing to consider is that they're both going to have to put a little bit more fuel in their car because they're not doing exactly 2 laps to the end. They'll be doing 2 and a little bit more. So they'll both have to err on the side of caution. They'll want to be putting in about 50% in the fuel tank as well. But if either of them mess up and accidentally put 40% in, that'll be over. So as we're coming up onto the last pit stop, let's go ahead and knock out what will be our last Twitch-mandated ad break. When we come back, we'll be here in the race to the end of this stint. We'll be back momentarily and see our leaders coming out pit lane when we do here at Nurburgring Nordschleife. So as we are closing down to the final moments, I think most of the positions on track have been well decided. There is a outside chance still that we see Chrysalid get caught by NDL Ardno, but I would not put any money on that happening. I'm not saying it can't happen, but Chrysalid still has a massive advantage when it comes to distance penalties. So even if Ardno does catch Chrysalid, he'd have to catch him and then overtake him by a significant margin. Water T is going to maintain his advantage over Habit by the looks of it, as Water T has just now come out of the pit lane. Habit is going to be pitting this time as well. So at some point, I think Water T must have done another set on the medium tires. Yeah, at some point, Water T did another 3-lap run on medium, so he's now back on sync with everyone else on winding pits, but he's basically cut out an entire pit stop. But he's so far away from everyone else, it's not really going to have an impact on anything. And then Rex Style, I think he is just good. He is staying just enough ahead of the rest of the field. I think he will barely stay on the lead lap by the end of this. Well, ESV has won at least one stint in all four of the last 3 Enduros in this championship. They are on track to make it 4 in a row where they have at least a stint win. But for overall win, they need something catastrophic to happen to F1R Moonrise to make that occur. About a quarter of an hour left, about an 1/8 of this middle stint left. And again, there will be a 3rd stint after this one. All right, through the carousel, let's see what the gap is between Barcode and Moonrise. $1,001, $1,002, $1,003, $1,004, $1,005, $1,006, $1,007, $1,000. About 7.5 to 8 seconds. So yeah, the gap is now opening up in Barcode's favor. And again, my big thing is I do not know if Moonrise will have the fuel to make it to the end. If Moonrise ends up running out of gas, all of a sudden, that would be the kind of thing that would put Barcode back in contention to winning the overall event, as Barcode has easily cleared the gap between himself and NDL Togue, I believe, at this stage of the event. So it looks like every position is resolved. Really, we're just curious on to if Moonrise will have the fuel to make it the extra fraction of a lap at the very end. compared to what Barcode has. Real quickly, looking at the tire and fuel comparison right now between our top two. 27% for the Dodge, 26% in the fuel for Moonrise. 28 in the tires, 23% in the fuel. Again, I am not confident in Moonrise's ability to go all the way to the end without running out of fuel. And if he runs out of fuel, Barcode's going to have a chance to massively open the gap on Moonrise. And we will have a legitimate fight for the overall event win on our hands. Mind you, Moonrise put 40% in the tank exactly when he pitted. Coming to the start-finish line. He's on track to only have about 1.2%. Real quickly, just to put in perspective how much farther 1.2% will take you into the following lap. This is it. This point, going under that little green and white overhang there, is about as far as Moonrise has. I think Moonrise is going to run himself out of fuel. He's either going to have to pit, or he's going to run himself out of fuel. Barcode, on the other hoof, still has not yet hit 20% in the tank.
Race ends in 10 minutes.
And even if Barcode runs himself out of fuel, which I do not think is going to happen, he would run himself out of fuel so much later than Moonrise, and he is so far ahead of Hyatt Cranky that no one would actually catch him. He could run out of fuel and be parked on track and still be fine. He's still not at the 20% mark. He's going to have something close to like 8% left in the tank. So yeah, Barcode is going to win this stint. We know that for a fact. The question is just going to be, how much is Moonrise going to lose this stint by? Because if Moonrise pits, he throws away so much time that immediately I think Barcode becomes overall event winner, overall event leader. If Moonrise stays out, he can go a little bit farther, but is going to run out of fuel before they even get out of the GP circuit. And there is a very strong possibility that Barcode's going to become overall event leader off the back of that anyway. If Moonrise spends this entire lap trying to save a little bit of fuel just so he can go a little bit farther, he's just going to see the gap between himself and Barcode open bigger and bigger anyway. He might still be able to maintain some of his advantage, but we are on track to see not only Barcode win this event, but Moonrise is going to lose this stint by so much that either he's going to be leading by a very small amount, or he's going to lose the overall event lead to ESV Barcode. Only good news for Moonrise is that he is so far ahead of Hyatt Cranky is that it's almost impossible for Hyatt Cranky to actually catch and overtake Moonrise for second in this stint, let alone second for the overall event. It will be, the leaders will be at about this point, or at least our race winner, our stint winner will be about this point in the lap, or a little bit earlier, by the end of our following circuit here. And again, I have no doubt in my mind that Barcode will have the fuel to the end. Moonrise is not, I see no way that Moonrise has the fuel to go to the end. He needs to start saving lots of fuel. He'll need to have about like 4% in the tank, I imagine, by the end of the lap if he wants to just make it out of the GP circuit and a decent amount into Nordschleife. He needs to be saving fuel, a significant amount of fuel at that. It's crazy for Moonrise. One stint won by a significant margin. Stint 2, though, Barcode has kept up with Moonrise, and they both upped each other's pace by so much that they're now going to be going deep enough into their extra pieces of a lap that one of them are going to run out of fuel. And that's not to mention their tire wear as well. You look at Barcode, his tires are at 44.8% right now. You look at Moonrise, his tires are at 45%. So actually, the tire life is going back in Moonrise's favor. But again, he has a bigger problem. We don't normally talk about fuel being an issue in this series. Fuel is, while we have mentioned a handful of times where it looks like someone's going to run out just before they come into the pits, typically fuel has not been a problem in this championship. And now in the final event, Moonrise may have screwed himself on the strategy. Oh yeah, that gap is so big that Moonrise can't even come close to seeing Barcode around most of the circuit now. Although I do think that Moonrise might be laying off the throttle a bit, trying to save fuel so he doesn't run out here. Chrysalid has pulled well away from Ardno, so that is not a fight in the slightest. Togue is running in 4th position on track right now. He should be able to make it
5 minutes remaining.
over Chrysalid. Chrysalid has a bit of a tire life advantage. I mean, a bit of a distance penalty advantage, but he has a massive tire life disadvantage compared to Togue right now. Chrysalid's been burning up the rears trying to keep up with Togue. There is an outside chance that Cosmic leapfrogs Ardno. Cosmic only has about like 1/9 of the distance penalty that Ardno has. High cranking might pull out, at least if whoever takes over the car for Stint 3 has a similar good run. High cranking might be able to pull out a top 3 result overall. Indiel Togue was second coming into the stint, went off lap 1, and has been very slow for him trying to make his way up through the grid. He has gotten up to 4th, but is not really in a position to gain any more ground after that. Chrysalid's not too terribly far back from him, but Chrysalid has burned his tires up so bad it's just not going to matter. Barcode is just flying right now. This is the last full lap, and he's going to have, what, 8% left in the tank when he crosses the line? He will have no worries at all about running out of fuel. If he's only using about, let's see here, 40 minus 8 would be 32. If he's only using about 16% of his fuel tank in a lap, he can go about half of the way around the circuit here, and there's not going to be quite enough time for him to do an entire halfway distance around. He's only going to be doing about 1/3 of the distance around. So Barcode is fine. For Moonrise, though, I am very concerned. He has saved a decent amount of fuel. I think he's going to cross the start-finish line with about 4% in the tank. Also, he's at 58.6%. Barcode is at 59%. But yeah, that's mostly off the back of Moonrise needing to back off to save fuel, so he's not burning up his tires. So again, unless Barcode has a catastrophic implosion, he's going to not only win this stint, he is going to make most of the gap between himself and Moonrise disappear just because Moonrise did not put the extra fuel in that he needed. I think the most impressive thing is that Barcode really upped the pace in this stint. Stint 2, these guys are going much, much faster than they did in Stint 1. And while Moonrise has mostly kept up, he's forgotten that the fuel tank couldn't keep up in the same way. And the fuel tank advantage, ironically enough, we were talking earlier how it seemed to take the Chevy less time to fill up in the pits than it did for the Dodge. But ironically, that advantage that the Chevy was enjoying earlier has now inverted in a very catastrophic way at the very end here. Again, we do not know if Moonrise is going to have the fuel to keep running these last 2 minutes here. He is down to 3.3%. If he uses more than 2% of his fuel in a minute, he is in so much trouble. Again, I don't think Hyatt Cranky is close enough to take advantage. I don't think Hyatt Cranky would be able to run down Moonrise and overtake him. Would be hilarious if it did happen. I don't think it will. That 2.3% with a minute 33 left, he might be able to make it work. 90 seconds. I think he'll be fine to the end. Tire life is not looking good, obviously, but I think he'll have enough fuel to the end. Just because you are so much slower in the opening parts of Nordschleife here. 1.5% with 70 seconds left. Also, he's just going to have to be off throttle so much because of his tires are so worn. 1 minute, 1% left in the tank. Just real quickly check. Does Hyatt Cranky have to worry about running out of fuel? No, not in the slightest. Although Cranky's just struggling to stay on circuit. So again, yeah, he's not catching Moonrise. There's no way. But Moonrise is going to... is he going to run out of fuel anyway? 30 seconds left. A little more than 30 seconds. He's less than 0.5%. We're going to see Moonrise run out here. He's out of fuel. That's it. It's over. And now we just watch the gap open up between Moonrise and Barcode as he is out of fuel. The car still sounds like it's going full bore. Why is it not out of fuel? Why did he not run out of fuel? Okay, that was whatever. But that gap massively opens up now and swings back in Barcode's favor. He's going to win by 9/10 of a mile, basically. So while Hyatt Cranky brains home third, Moonrise somehow makes magic fuel numbers, goes very deep into the run, and Barcode wins Stint 2, and we have a legitimate fight. We're going to knock out an ad break, and when we come back, we'll try to talk to some of our top finishers here at Nurburgring Nordschleife. Chrysalid, can you hear me? Hello. Do you want to do an interview? All right. In the Xbox party, is there a little box you can hit to include your audio?
Here. Done.
All right. Awesome. Gonna see if anyone else wants to jump in here. I think it's only gonna be you. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to Nurburgring Nordschleife. I am here with our 5th place finisher, Chrysalid. Chrysalid, it was a very interesting run for you, coming home in 5th position. What do you have to say about your run out there today?
I don't know. I'm a little tired, but it was interesting with Dodge and Arno and Cosmic. It was a good stint.
Who is going to be driving the car in stint 3?
Me again.
Oh my. Oh dear. All right, well, in that case, I'll let you go now so you can get some rest before the final stint, mate. Good luck.
Thank you, thank you. See you.
All right, and that is the word from our 5th place finisher, Crislid, who also seems to be doing a 3-stint Ironman run here. No one else of our top finishers seemed to be willing to jump in here. So with that in mind, that will wrap up our broadcast for stint 2. But don't you worry, in about 40 minutes or so, we will be back for the final stint, and not just this race, but the entire P1R SEC Championship. Until that time, though, I've been your host for today's broadcast, Insanely 13. Thank you very much for joining us. Farewell and goodbye, everyone.